good old marketplace pulled through. This is the auxiliary replacement fuel tank that I purchased for this little girl. It's way bigger than the small one that we have on there existingly, and doesn't have holes in it like the original tank. So we're gonna try to get this thing fixed up, come up with a way to mount it, and then we'll be able to drive this and operate it for more than one hot lap on the driveway. It's got some fuel in it still. We need to get this plug out of the bottom if it'll come out. Drain that out because it's skunky a little bit, and see if we can't come up with a way to mount this thing. So it looks a little crusty. Wow. So most of the chunky stuff that's in this container was just in there before. It's just a universal catch pan, but it actually smells like decent gas. I mean, it isn't turpentine yet. It's not the freshest gas in the world, but it definitely isn't completely rotten. So that's a good sign. Get this plug back in there, clean this tank up, try to find a way to mount this thing. I don't know if you noticed when I was shaking it around to get that old fuel out of there, it has a sending unit in it, so it does have the ability to add a fuel gauge to it. One of the reasons this interested me is I do need an auxiliary fuel pump portable fuel source, so this could make a good candidate for any other jobs or tasks that would require a little auxiliary fuel tank. What would be ideal is if we can get this fuel tank mounted up high enough, that way the little electric fuel pump doesn't have to work as hard to get it to the carburetor. I have all these scrap painted steel channels that came with a pallet rack. Somehow we're going to try to use these to make a mount for this fuel tank, because they're just laying around doing nothing, and makes it a perfect candidate so we can use them for something. So I think we're going to do something like this, basically make like a skid system where we have these rails on the bottom, make them wide enough so they could straddle the frame so I can turn it sideways if I want. And then I think we'll weld in some vertical supports here, maybe a short one on this side and a tall one on this side, just to kind of trap the tank in there. That way it can't come out. And yeah, let's make it happen. Yeah, I like that. Let's get over to the bandsaw, which actually works now that we replaced the pump. Ironically, the pump never was what was wrong with it. The saw from the factory was switched polarity from, I don't know, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever they built it. I've owned it for 10 years and I've never tried the coolant pump until of recent. Funny story. I didn't have this bucket here when I cut the first piece, and yeah, didn't really think about it, but all the coolant went in the channel and outside this way all over the floor. Don't tell the shop foreman, she would have a fit. So we got a little catch bucket in here. I guess lesson learned, first time I use this with coolant. We're gonna cut our second piece for our rear upright. And this thing works fabulous with that brand new Lennox Made in USA blade and our trim cutting fluid. Now if we can just keep it from going all over the floor. Just need to get in here and clean the paint off so we can weld our uprights on. Well, she's starting to come together and she's starting to look like a skid. That's what we're going for here. Basically a skid that we can lift off and take other places, not only just for this project. So the fuel tank will sit over here, and then I think we're going to have a battery over here and a fuel pump That way this is self-contained. We can take it somewhere, we can sit it on a truck, a chassis, a frame, hook up the fuel line, hit the switch, and she's ready to rock and roll. Let's get this all welded up. This new welding helmet makes a world of difference. I get a much better weld quality than what I did previously playing peekaboo with the welding helmet. I really appreciate this. This is a Lincoln, I forget the number. It's a Lincoln Viking automatic dimming welding helmet that I received as a birthday gift. And I really appreciate that. And thank you everyone that contributed to this birthday gift. This really helps me out. And to be honest with you, I'm way too cheap to buy one this nice. This is a really nice Lincoln Electric Viking auto dimming helmet. This is a good one. What the? Oh, you're not gonna believe this. We had a pretty big oversight here. I wanted to put that crossbar directly under the tank so we wouldn't sit it down onto something that would stab the tank by accident. But doing so, I forgot about the drain plug, which lands luckily not right on the weld joint, but just inside of it. We're gonna have to make a clearance hole in that bottom leg to clear that plug. I found this old hole saw in one of the free saws and drill bits that I got from Grandpa's old garage. Now, has a little bit of wang in the shaft, and I've never used one. You pull a screw and it has selectable discs. Yeah, I really don't know if this is gonna cut at all, but we're gonna give it a try, and if it doesn't, it's gonna go right in the recycle me bin. What happened there? And it shaved all the teeth off. So this is definitely not meant for metal. We'll come back and try again. I got that cut through there, but that took forever, largely because I couldn't find my hole saw kit. I still don't know where it is, but we found one of our other hole saws and we're able to punch it through there. Doesn't look like I hit the record button either. So there we go. This side looks a little goofy, and she kind of 12 inches down there, she kind of spread out on me. I think this leg kind of twisted. So I think we'll put just a little small piece in there to tie the top and bottom, or to tie the left and the right together. So I don't necessarily always have the right clamp or size of clamp, but I do always have old scrap ratchet straps. We got a 2-inch piece of that scrap that we're using. We're going to zip off the ears on both sides and then cut us a leg. So this is the leg that's about 1.5 inches long. We'll also have to adjust this length. I'll have to check it. We're going to make it 1.5 inches long this way, and then over here long enough to catch the tab on the fuel tank to make a retainer. Alright, we're tightening up our last bolt here. This angle piece actually was kind of cupped in, so that helps us as we're tightening it up. It's flattening out here and pulling in tighter. Yeah, she's pretty tight on there. That's what we wanted to be. So we're gonna mount a battery box on here. Probably more so this way biased so it can counteract the weight of the fuel if you want to pick it up later. I'm gonna put this on here. We're gonna put a fuel pump on here, some hose. I mean, maybe if we get really crazy in the future, a fuel gauge. I don't know. Then it'll pick up crooked. I want to kind of be balanced in the middle, so we need to add in some support bars. Maybe something around in this region here, so it isn't so flimsy. Well, we got the fuel pump mounted here, just one little 1/4-20 screw drilled into the upright support. Got our wires. They're actually long enough that we tucked them into the battery box that we mounted here, and probably just alligator clip them to the battery if we want to, or put eyelets on the end. Not really sure what we're going to do just yet. This might be a different solution to run this truck than what we're going to do permanently. But we do have the pickup installed up here with a fuel filter. We just need to connect this fuel filter to the fuel pump and then get our long hose to go up to the carburetor. Skid isn't necessarily mounted to the truck yet. It's just kind of sitting there in a spot that it would fit. We're behind the auxiliary hydraulic oil tank and the pump. It could technically go in front of this, but I think we're just going to leave it back here and stretch out enough hose. That way we can feed our existing fuel filter right at our fuel pump on the frame. That way when we're done, we'll have a nice big extra spool we can wrap up on the skid here. Whoa. Haha. So this is one of those little extra added on accessories. I found out that I have a fuel gauge from another project long time ago. It actually came with a sending unit. This tank already has a sending unit, so what we're going to do is mount this guy to this so it has a little bit of a eyebrow slash cover and protection from the elements, and then we'll be able to read the fuel level without sticking something in the tank. That'd be pretty handy. So now what we need to do is, so we need to deburr that a little bit more. Get us some holes in here to mount this, and I think I'm going to mount a toggle switch too to turn it on and off. Alright, we got the gauge all hooked up. Now if all goes well, we have a 12-volt power source, a ground, and then the yellow is a sensing wire. What I also did is it has a light that's supposed to come on with the gauges, of course, or the gauge lights, but in this case we're just installing this on this auxiliary fuel source rig. So we got it wired in to the hot and the ground. That way anytime the switch is toggled on, the light will be on, and it'll kind of be an indication that, hey, if it stays in there, it'll be an indication that, hey, your fuel pump switch is on. I'm going to put a couple nuts on there for spacers, and then I'll include the original clamp bracket, that way we don't lose it, just in case we want to mount this in something different in the future. I'm going to have to tidy these wires up somehow. This yellow wire has to go back to the tank sending unit, and the rest have to go basically back to the battery. We do have another black wire here that's just a ground for the tank, so the sending unit works. I'll probably run that over with the sensor wire. I'll put this toggle switch on there to turn it on and off, but I want to put it somewhere where the contacts aren't exposed, and also so it doesn't let water back into the battery box. So this ear over here, it extends out for the cables. We're going to drill it in right in here and pop it right in there. Okay, I had to remove the little label to get the nut started. I basically spun the whole unit on the inside. So we had clearance in there. As long as we didn't break the terminals off here, we should be good to go. Just put a little red mark on there. Up means on, down means off. I don't know if you can tell from the lighting around, it's not getting dark. The clouds are just rolling in, and Sunday fun day is going to turn into Sunday rain day here pretty soon. But we got all this wiring, conglomeration, switch, mess, gauge, etc. hooked up. And now we're going to go ahead and throw the switch and see what happens. We've still got to tidy everything up. But before we do that, let's make sure it works. All right, it's working. I know the tank isn't quite full. It's probably closer to the lower end. I'll show you how to correct that and adjust that after we get everything wired up. Good news is we can turn the toggle switch on, the fuel pump will come on, the fuel gauge will come on, and the light will come on, indicating that the system is turned on. That way, if we forget for some odd reason or want to know at a glance, hey, is this on or not, we can look and see if the light's on. I need to adjust the resistance on the sending unit wire, the signal wire. That way the gauge will read correctly for the level of the fuel in the tank. The good news is it actually works. So I'm going to get all these wires tidied up, get this closed up, all the wires taped up, and go from there. So this is a sending unit that was on the tank, and basically we have a ground wire in the tank, and then we have the sensor wire coming from the gauge. When you connect this to this guy, the gauge will activate, but it shows too high of a level in the tank, so the resistance is incorrect. And what I have here is, this is just, if you'll focus on that, a small resistor that was pulled out of a computer many moons ago when I was installing a remote car starter. We'll put this in line here and then read the gauge. This is just kind of a guessing game. I believe this was in a bag that said this was 98 ohms of resistance. Let's see what that does. I hook up the sensor wire with no resistor. It's reading almost 3/4 or just shy of 3/4 of the way full. And when I hook it up with the resistor in line, it's reading just shy of 1/4 of a tank, right around 1/4 of a tank, and that's exactly what we want. That's pretty darn close given our little measuring stick gauge of how full the tank is. So we'll have to go with that, and then we'll have to fill the tank up and see if it's full and see how that compares to the resistance of the full value. Yeah, she definitely full. Right now she's reading, I don't know, about a 1/4 inch over full. And when I put that resistor in there that I was showing you earlier, it was down here. So I think what's going to happen is if I find the correct resistor, it may or may not give us the full sweep from full to empty, but we're going to try to find it. The resistor I was using was 68 ohms, so we need like a, I don't know, 15 to 30 ohm resistor, or we just leave it as it is and know that, hey, it's over full, it's full there, and then about a 1/4 of a tank or so it gets empty, maybe. That new auxiliary fuel skid is going to be one heck of an improvement. It's going to give us a much better range than that little teeny tiny 1-gallon fuel tank that we had on there previously. And it will be able to get us to the scale, hopefully, so we can weigh this thing and get it prepared for the crane installation and chassis modification. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Leave your questions and comments in that section below. And don't forget to punch the subscribe button your way out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Check it out. All the cab lights are on. No headlights, but cab lights.